Evening all, we're back on the Jetta. I preemptively apologise about my voice. I currently sound like the bastard love child of Marge Simpson and Barry White. I've had a horrible cold for the last couple of weeks, but feeling better, just astounding, terrible. And yes. So, cracking on with this today. Gonna have a look at removing the scuttle. That's gonna need to get out of the way for finishing off this inner wing on this side. And before I do anything else on the inner wings, I need to build a jig, and I haven't got the steel for that yet, so I might as well carry on with something. So this needs to come off. It's completely rotten. I've got a new one over there that's attached to a front end that also needs to come off, but in a slightly more calculated fashion than this one. So I'm going to take some measures from what is here. As you can see, there is a lot missing. So it's going to be hard. Ideally, what I would have done is just take out these spot welds along here, so at least I've got this nice clean edge to weld the new one back to. But as you can see, it's eaten all the way into there, a good 10-15 mil into the bulkhead there. So the whole thing's going to have to come off. We're going to have to cut a line through here. I did think I could just undo these spot welds, but these don't actually hold any of this. This is a continuous section of bulkhead. This is just the section for the dash. So yes, we're going to need to find a logical line to cut through here. So before I do that, I'm going to have to get all this black crap off of here and find out how far the rust actually goes. Take what measures I can from the windscreen so I can kind of line up what I can, get rid of this crap off the roof. And then yeah, as you can see, I've had a bit of a tidier up here, which means I now have access to my front end chop off of the Mk1 Golf donor car that I had. So I'm going to be using this back section that's in a wing to patch up all that. I'm also going to use the whole front end to make a jig for aligning the inner wings up to the strut towers and everything, because obviously I don't have enough on my car to even think about starting to make a jig from it, so better off making it off of this and then transferring everything over. Also, as you can see, the windscreen scuttle on this one is rather tidy, as is the rain tray and everything. So yes, all the connections here, you can see where it's all spot welded on, so that's going to have to come out nice and neat. I'm going to have to try and do as little damage to this as possible whilst removing it. So in theory being, we'll take the one off my Jetta, because it doesn't matter if that one gets foobarred. Learn as I go with that, and then hopefully know what I'm doing by the time I come around to looking at this. So let's crack on. So that's the black crap cleaned off. Well, most of it is still a bit here, as you can see, because the battery ran out of my drill, but I thought it was the opportunity to see where we're up to. As you can see, where are we? Here. Underneath that, there's still all these little holes and pitting down here. And so that's what all that stuff was covering up. So you could have quite easily cut along this line here and just thought that it was just this top edge that's rusty, but it has extended down underneath. So like I said, I am going to have to cut this further down, probably around here. So it's just taking a consistent measurement probably off of this panel line here all the way along, that I can then marry up with my other scuttle and hopefully replace. Just taking some measurements before I cut this thing off. As you can see, I managed to get hold of some original geometry from the old internet, which is quite handy. Should have come in handy when lining out the inner wings and stuff as well. I'm still going to make a jig, but I want to double check all the measures as and when I go. Looking at this from the front edge of my scuttle here to the back edge of this slam panel, should apparently be 811, which, looking at mine, that's pretty damn close. Quite pleased with that. However, if I take my trusty tape measure over to my donor front end over here, now bearing in mind this one is the straight one, this is the one that I'm taking all the measures off, and everything should make sense. Should see I'm a good 5 mil out on this one. So yeah, that's throwing a bit of a spanner in the works. I've taken measures within this little drip detail there and between the rain tray and the scuttle, and there's fluctuations between the two, between this and between my Jetta. There's a couple of mil here and there. So I mean, all that could equate to the 5 mil. Obviously, I mean, if this edge is slightly bent, then that's going to affect things. From what I can see, it isn't. But I mean, obviously on mine as well, I've got all this flex in this. I've got all this flex in this front panel. So if mine was out, I could understand it. But mine's the one that's right. You knew, eh? So yeah, that's slightly unnerving. But I'm going to crack on anyway. There's enough other things to measure too, and yeah, it'll be right in the end, I'm sure. So I come up with my reasonably technical solution for getting a matchable cut line between both front ends using these old vernier calipers. They don't really work very well anymore, but as you can see, I've locked them out at approximately 50 mil because that's kind of the rough measure I wanted to get all the way along here. And then all I've done essentially is run them along this a factory kind of weld line here. So I've created a score line 50 mil along here. The reason I use the verniers to do that is because it bridges over the top of these little dashboard retaining bits, so I could get that line to run all the way along. So yeah, hopefully that'll work. It does mean that I'm relying solely on this being spot welded in exactly the same place on both things, but I can't see why it wouldn't be. So yes, done it on that. I've just laid some white primer down on my Jetta because this is all freshly wire wheeled to get that black crap off, and strangely enough, scratches don't really show up very well on freshly brushed metal. So just laid some primer down solely so that when I do it on this side, it'll show up a bit clearer, and then I can mark it with a Sharpie and get cutting. So trimming has begun. As you can see, I'm now without the vast majority of my scuttle. I haven't trimmed it down to the line yet. I've just got the bulk of it off because, to be honest, most of it was off anyway. There was nothing connecting it along all of here, so I basically trimmed through the edges at each side to get the bulk of it out the way, so when I come to trim that line, it gives me a bit more space to play with and makes it a bit neater. Well, hopefully a bit neater anyway. So I got my line marked out. As you can see, it looks wafty as balls, but trust me, it isn't. It does follow the line of that panel. So hopefully that'll work. I've had a look underneath, started wire wheeling off under there, and I'm pretty sure that 50 mil there or thereabouts should be enough to cover all the rust and everything that's on there. So that's that. In removing my scuttle, I can now have a look at the top of these A-pillars, which I was slightly worried about. Turns out I was right to be slightly worried about them because they look like crap. And my real worry now is looking up inside these windscreen A-pillars here. I've got a horrible feeling that this corrosion is going to extend up behind this front bit. So what I was originally hoping to do was just trim this around here. I can see that creeping higher and higher as things happen. Not so much on this side, but over here we had this rusty patch at the top here, which I've kind of wire wheeled quite extensively, and you can see it's still corroding up there, and with a bit of a push this was a bit crispy as well. So I can see I'm going to have to, at the very least, take a panel out of here. I really don't want to have to cut my A-pillars, but if I can just take this front section of it off down here and just kind of lift that off and see what's going on inside there. But that's some scary stuff for another day. Can have a look at this lovely repair that the previous owner did. In his defense, it's one of the few actual weld repairs. It's not just filler. But the problem is here, I appreciate it's difficult to gain access to the inside of here when the scuttle's on there. But most people would obviously take the wing off and weld it from this side. Now, he hasn't been able to do that because the wing was essentially held on with filler, so there was no way of getting it off. So basically they've welded it from the inside, which means, I mean, all these bits are just slotted in and floating around in the breeze, and if anything, creating so many different water trap gaps and everything. No wonder this side's absolutely rotten. I mean, this whole top section here is a complete write-off. Big old hole here, everything on this, where this strut mounts up, and the A-pillar on this side. It's a bit clean there, but it's all pitted, and I'm not sure how strong that's going to be. That's, and again, something to look at another day. So I was hoping to get the Jetta fully prepped today, and that hasn't happened. But I have made progress, and slow progress is still progress. That's my new mantra. So, yes, I'm not staying any later. I'm ill. I've had enough. But for now, that's that.